We bring you Dallas Cowboys Executive Vice President Stephen Jones. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, guys.
Man, we've talked
Hope you had a good Christmas.
Yeah, I hope you had a good Christmas as well. I feel like we all know kind of the lore of the Jones cabin after Thanksgiving. Is there a big family post-Christmas tradition?
No, not really. There's more of a Christmas tradition, which is at my parents' house, and we do that usually a couple days beforehand and around ball games. But it's a great time, and between my brother, sister, and I, and our children, we get to hang out with Gene and Jerry, and we have a really festive afternoon and evening.
You know, we talked to Jerry leading into that Christmas game, and I'm sure this is the hope for you, the hope for the league. Do you feel like Christmas football can become as entrenched in our society as Thanksgiving football is?
Absolutely. I think people are relaxed. I think they're looking for entertainment. I think they're looking, to get a lot of things off their mind and just enjoy their families. And I think sport and football certainly has a way to do that, a way about it that people really embrace it. They certainly have shown they do it at Thanksgiving, and I think we can grow this into something very special.
You know, Dak has talked a whole lot about closing the season with pride and reaching 500 for the season. What would getting that final win and finishing at 500 mean to you and to the organization?
Yeah, I think it's obviously something we've got our eye on the ball on. I mean, we're, disappointed we're in this position. We really, felt like after that 3-game run during Thanksgiving that we were getting back in it and had a shot, but we didn't play our best ball there for, starting with Detroit. But, feel like we're getting our hands around it again, and certainly, it would be something we could build off of in the off season is finish strong. And, we just feel like we got a lot of pieces in place between, obviously the offense had a great year, and we still got a lot of work to do on defense. It just never quite came around to the level that we need it to be to be competing for a championship. And that's where we have to be. But at the same time, we do think we put a lot of pieces, on that defensive side of the ball. Certainly we've fired up about, having 2 number 1 picks going into the off season, and, just feel like we're really heading into a good direction with Shotty and his staff and this football team. And it'd be great to finish strong.
And Stephen, sticking with those picks that you mentioned, you and the front office members mentioned around the draft season that you usually finish with less than 20 or so first-round grades, somewhere like 16 to 17 on a good year. And there's a chance you could be picking outside of that talent window. What would you say to people that are more concerned about picking within that talent window versus finishing the year strong?
Yeah, I just think, finishing and winning is so important. And, I still think we're going to be right there where there's some, and, our 1-2-0 grades are really a lot of them are just right borderline first round grades. And there's been a lot of great players come out of those 1-2-0s. And we just feel like there's going to be similar type players once you get into where we're probably going to be picking, which is, probably somewhere between 11 and 21 if you count Green Bay's pick, and just think there's going to be some good football players there.
Fair to assume we all really want Green Bay to lose in the first round of the playoffs, though, right?
I hate to root against people, but yes, they would understand why we're rooting against them. And we want our picks, obviously their pick, to be as good as it can possibly be. So whoever they're up against, I'm sure we'll be rooting for them.
A couple of weeks ago, we talked about Javonte Williams. I wanted to shift gears and get your thoughts on the play of Jadeveon Clowney this season. And when he talks about he wants to be ready earlier next year and everything, do you think he has merited a spot on this team next year?
Absolutely. I mean, he's played a very high level. He's played, he's been one of our best pressure players, and obviously has a great pedigree being the first pick in the draft, albeit a few years ago. But, no, we'd love to have Jadeveon back. We'll be talking with his guys right away, and would love to get him in the mix, and because he is a leader, we'd love to have him in the mix from the get-go, which would be outstanding. So hopefully we with his willingness to want to be here and us wanting him to be here, hopefully we can figure something out.
You know, you've always, over the years, always given us really good insight on the salary cap. I'm curious, and maybe the process changes every single year. Do you guys sit down and you go, well, we're going to, flip the switch on Dak, Tyler, CD, whatever the case is, and this is the real amount of money that we're going to be working with going into the offseason?
Yeah, we've already, we have our different iterations of the cap, and certainly have iterations where we work the majority of, if not all of our high-priced guys, and seeing what we can really do here to keep, guys like George Pickens and Javonte Williams, and as you mentioned, Jadeveon Clowney, and see if we can keep those guys around. And certainly that's what we've been working on. We've been our group that works in and around our cap have been hard at it, and we'll take a long, hard look at it and see what we have there. Obviously, we've added some players, and when you look at guys like Kenny Clark and Q and those guys, so obviously those guys are going to be a big part of it. We signed Osa last year, so we feel like we're in good shape, and that we can certainly make this team better, and we plan on doing that.
And Kenny Clark feels like maybe kind of a unique situation in terms of he's still under contract, but there's no guaranteed money left on the contract. Does that give both sides some more flexibility to make sure something can be worked out?
Absolutely, and Kenny's just been more than advertised for us. He's a leader. He's a man's man. He's great on the field. He's great off the field in the room with the guys. He's a guy we want to have around here.
And Stephen, focusing on the defense, specifically on the linebacker position, I want to know your thoughts on Logan Wilson and his progression, as he did not play a single snap last week, and just overall what you think needs to be done at that position group going into the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, that was unfortunate with Logan. We had just they didn't have many snaps throughout the game, much less, obviously, in the first half, very few snaps. And, we'll say it was, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but some confusion in terms of how that rotation was supposed to go with Coach Berganzi and the rotation there. It was certainly wasn't the intent for him not to play a snap, but sometimes the game with not many snaps on one particular side of the ball, things can not go according to plan. So I'm sure Shotty will address that as well. But certainly think a lot of Logan and what he brings to the table. But, we're going to roll up our sleeves and look at all the areas where we have to improve. And, K9's had his moments this year where he's played well, and he's obviously very talented. And Logan's obviously a guy we think can help there, but we've got to really roll up our sleeves and see how we can make this defense better in the offseason.
Confusion on the part of the player or the position coach?
The position coach and the staff, the defensive staff.
Well, we appreciate the time very much in the talk about momentum going into that final game. We're all looking forward to it on Sunday. Thank you very much for the time, good sir.
Thanks, guys.
There you go. Stephen Jones right here on 105.3 The Fan.